huge round of applause for our next panel for AI regulations for financial services. Come on, let me hear it for Shri Sahil Kini, CEO, Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. Mr. Sharad Sharma, co-founder, iSPIRT Foundation. Mr. Rohan Sachdev, managing partner, EY India Consulting. And I would also like to invite Mr. Ruchin Goyal, MD and senior partner, BCG, who will be moderating this session. Come on, everybody, put your hands together to welcome these gentlemen on stage.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think we've had a fantastic, conference this morning, and we've had many speakers talk about all the wonderful use cases that AI can enable and power. And in a very short couple of years' time, I think, from the first time when ChatGPT came about, AI is no longer just a fringe technology. It's becoming mainstream. We are seeing financial services companies around the world adopting AI at scale, from underwriting, robo-advisory, fraud detection, the use cases are many. But with all these advantages, all the benefits that AI brings in, it also comes with its own sets of challenges. There was a big discussion on blue versus red socks or hallucinations, errors, biases. If you have, AI-driven models, they can start biasing against certain class of people, and so on and so forth. So the discussion that we will have in this panel really is about what is the right balance between innovation, speed, agility on one hand, to stability, fairness, and managing risks on the other hand, and how do we, tread the right balance. I have a fantastic set of, panel members. And so let me, start with you, Sharad. We are seeing a host of regulations around the world coming in the field of AI. In fact, just a couple of days back, there was a draft guidelines also in India, and you've been, I think, part of almost all those, committees. As you look at the regulations that are coming out from the Western world, more specifically, say, Europe, and what's happening in India, how do we think about AI regulations? How will India be different from the rest of the world?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. And the reason for being different are many. One, of course, is that we have to worry about children. We had 23 million children last year. China had 9. Indonesia had 8. In fact, if you take the next 5 countries, they're roughly about 23 million. We are the cradle for humanity. So if we don't deal with child safety in the world of AI, we'll not lose only the Indian generation. It will be an impact on whole of humanity. So that's one reason. Second, the world has changed. AI is very different from internet. Internet was seen as a global public good. It lifts all boats. Do you think AI is seen like that? Do you think US and China see AI like that? No. It's a tool for hegemonic power, economic power and political power. And it's been stated as such. It's a bipartisan consensus in the US between Biden administration and Trump administration. So can we be dependent on US or Chinese AI in the long term? No, that's going to be extremely foolish for us to do that. So we have to have our own AI as we go forward. That's the second motivation for this to happen. And the third is that Sahil and I come from a different part of India where we think differently. We think we have the wherewithal to make that happen. Let me see if I can prove it to you. We are 3% of global trade. We are 7% of the global economy. We are 17% of the global population. What do you think is our percentage of digital transactions? And I'll mention 3 types of transactions. One that NPCI handles, which are commerce transactions. Second are DBT transactions, which are used to support Bharat or even poorer parts of India. But that's wealth transfer. So then the third type of transactions are tax transactions. So my question to you, how many of you think we are more than 17%? All right. How much more? Are we 34%? How many of you think we are 34%? How many of you think we are more than 50% of the global digital transactions? I'm happy to see 1/3 of the hands going up. We are 72% of the DBT transactions of the world. We are 54% of the tax transactions through GST in the world. And in commerce, we are roughly about 51% of the transactions. All this has happened since when, Sahil? In the last 7, 8 years. All of it has emerged from this bold thinking that we won't be laggards, we will be leaders, right? We can do that for AI. So, and we will do that for AI. But for that to happen, Bombay has to cooperate. Delhi has to cooperate. Delhi makes the policy. Bombay is the adopter organization. Both of you have to come together because if India has to prosper, Bangalore will build the tech, Bombay will consume the tech, and Delhi will make the policy. Now the question is, will that policy be different? The short answer to that is yes. There are 4 things that will be different. As we go along, we'll talk about them. AI chain. If you don't leave this session knowing what AI chain is, it's not been worth it. Second is an AI agent store. That's going to be very important for you. Third is the data economy as defined by DEPA. That's going to be extraordinarily important. And the fourth one is really going to be about BYOC. Have you heard of BYOB? Huh? Bring your own. So there is a BYOC. So we'll talk about BYOC. So these are the 4 things that our regulation is going to introduce, and Bangalore Techno-Legal is going to introduce. We'll talk about all 4 briefly if we have time. And this is what hopefully you will leverage to build valuable AI companies out of India.
Thank you, Sharad. I think this itself, we can have a half a day discussion on the different, terms that you just mentioned, Sharad. But just building on this theme, you alluded to not just being a consumption economy, but also being a producer economy, right? That can be, of course, we are the most populous country in the world, with 1.5 billion people, 74% of the world's digital transactions. So we'll be large consumers of AI, which we are today, right? The question is, can we also become large producers of AI? And Sahil, in your role right now, but also all the stints you've done, do you think India is geared for that? And what is required from a regulations perspective and broader ecosystem perspective to get us there?
I think building things and regulation, I think, comes a little after you build something. I think we're very capable of building things, but I think we need to make lots of investments to make that happen. One aspect was mentioned particularly, we are a country of an oral tradition, and text in general has been new. If you actually look at our written histories and all, it begins much later than the rest of the Western world. Even today, literacy levels aren't where they need to be in terms of fluency, etc. So vernacular voice-based AI, being able to talk to AI in your mother tongue, I think requires a lot more data set generation and investment from Indian companies to make it more robust. I'm surprised by how far it has gone with models built by the West, but I can't help but think how much further we would go if we made further investments. There have been projects in various IITs and various centers of excellence where we're capturing different dialects and different different languages across the country. We have 29 languages, or actually more, 60 languages close to, that are spoken by at least 1 million speakers. The last People's Linguistic Survey of India said there are 960 languages in this country. So just sticking to English, Hindi will not take care of us, all of us. So that's one. Second is, even globally, when you talk about how AI is used, it is used primarily for research and writing. People are talking about agentic AI, but again, agentic AI hasn't taken off yet in the massive use cases. There's all demos, cool demos. Even if you have a PhD in astrophysics. It doesn't mean you know how to change a car tire, right? So they talk about having a PhD in your pocket, but can you ask that PhD change a car tire? If that PhD has not changed his car tire in the past, he won't know or she won't know. So there in the US and in a few other places, there are already companies building environments on which AI can train, like a replica of Amazon or a replica of various of these apps, and teaching that AI to take those actions. So if you want AI to be actually actionable beyond just talking and getting research and say, do this for me. And India is very much a do it for me economy, right? Do it yourself is less prevalent here. And so somebody has to do it for you. And if AI has to actually be useful for you, then it has to learn to do something for you, useful economic output for you, which means AI has to be trained in those environments. And that, I think, is another, building those training environments for AI and training new types of models that can carry out actions on your behalf could be very powerful. And the same goes for, now when you come to regulation, you take our approach on regulation has been very principles driven, not rules driven, not controls driven. And there have been two primary reports that have come out in the last 2 months to 3 months. The first one was the Reserve Bank of India's Free AI report, which came out in August of this year. And just yesterday or day before, the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor built on that report and released another set of guidelines for AI. And if you look at that, they talk more about sutras. Sutras are principles. And then enabling conditions, both on managing risk and enabling innovations. The sutras are very beautifully put. And they talk about trust being the foundation. People come first. Right? You're talking about inclusion, making sure AI is inclusive, making sure AI is fair and ethical, and removing bias. Because I don't think, one of the things that, one of the beautiful things I think is possible with AI in this country is that often in the broad mass of India, we are perhaps not as nice to someone slightly different from us, slightly different language, slightly different religion, slightly different dialect. We can be quite mean to each other, I feel, sometimes. Whereas a machine can be much more, and AI can be much more inclusive, treat everyone the same. The color of your skin or your last name or your religion should not matter as much. And that future, I think, AI can build, can fundamentally be more inclusive. When you're opening a bank account or when you're going to a branch, I encourage all of you to go once with people who help you out, people who are behind the counter, people who serve you at home, people who drive your car. When they go to a bank, go with them and sit on the bench and just watch how they're treated. And then you go with your fair skin, tall, this thing, and see how you're treated. Very different treatment. People, it's fundamental. And putting an AI can actually drive a lot of inclusion around that. So, but at the same time, there are a few safeguards that need to be thought of. And one of the main safeguards I think people need to think about very clearly is one of the principles, which I don't think is going anywhere, is understandable by design. Now, understandable means something has to be explainable. Now, our transformer architectures that have been deployed right now are by design, black boxes. So they can't necessarily, even, you take the best researchers of AI in OpenAI or DeepMind or wherever, you ask them, why does the transformer do this? And like, well, that's not the best question to ask. That's the wrong question to ask. That's like asking what came up before the Big Bang, because time started with the Big Bang. These things are not explainable by design. I'm not so sure that in high-stakes use cases like financial services, you can get away with saying the model made me do it. That's like saying the dog ate my homework. It does not work. So but again, transformer-led approaches might be very popular, might have given us tremendous results, but there are so many AI and machine learning models that are understandable, that are fast, that are scalable. So making the right architecture choices, I think, is very, very important when you are in a regulated kind of use case. These are just some of my thoughts. We can go further in detail later.
No, thank you, Sahil. I think a lot of interesting thoughts that we need AI that is inclusive, but also, AI that is explainable, especially in financial services. And just kind of building on, that theme of explainability or ensuring, that we have some guardrails on the outcomes, right? And I move to you, Rohan, on the role of boards, in today's world of AI. And just giving a small anecdote, example, which is well known. Air Canada, a few years back, very early on when the technology was still nascent, they had a chatbot on their website. And a customer went there, and the chatbot basically told the customer that he is eligible for a discount, and he was, going for his mother's funeral, right? And he went ahead and booked the ticket, thinking that he'll get a discount, and then he claimed the discount. And then the airline told him that, that the chatbot gave you wrong information, and you're not eligible for the discount. And that case went on all the way for a couple of years in the court, and finally the court ruled in favor of the customer. So the question is, how should the board think about the risk in the world of AI when there are so many bots being deployed, right? And sometimes, it's unclear in terms of who's written the code. It's a question of, in a real world, when a driver makes a mistake, you can, prosecute the driver. But, in a self-driven, car, you can't catch the coder and, put the blame on the coder. So how should boards and the regulations think about, managing risks?
See, I think the boards are right now very conscious of this demand. I think they all realize that they need to be in there. So I think the first step I would say is educating themselves. I think having AI literacy is the first step towards then managing any AI risks. Because if you don't understand that part of AI, how are you going to manage the risks around AI? So I think that's step one. And I see that, at least from personal experience, a lot of board members are taking very active interest in understanding AI. We do a lot of sessions with them. They want to understand what does it mean, what are the model risks, what are the other risks, and how do you then deal with them. I think the second part of that is, as boards, they need to set up compliance and governance committees. And they could be a combination of people from the board, from leadership. You could have internal auditors, you have people from the technology teams, but a whole host of people who come together to see what's the risk of AI, what's the model risk, what's happening with this, so that there is enough governance and control around it, but there's also adequate reporting around it. I would say that's the second part. The third part, I think the RBI has put the free AI framework. I think that goes into explaining, what are the risks and areas that you should be looking at now. He's saying what should you be looking at from a model risk perspective? What is there from a, we spoke about ethnicity risk, other risks that are there. So I think understanding that, ensuring that you're covering those risks that you have in there, I think is going to be very important. See, when you come to financial services, there are three words that always play out. One is trust. One is ethical behavior. And the third one is following regulations and governance. I think those are the three very important words you play out. So I think if they follow those, I think the boards will need to do a lot more around this. I think the senior management teams need to do a lot more around this to be aware of what could be the risks. I think the second point that could be there, Ruchin, is that historically, as we've looked at our risks in our business, and I think someone mentioned it, financial services looked at op risk, credit risk, market risk. And we model all of our capital around that. But today, I think there are lots of new risks that are going to come up. There's a new model risk that is going to come up. How do you now start modeling around that? There is a customer risk that is going to come up, which might not have been there in the past. So how do you start modeling your capital around that? See, at the end of the day, I think you've got to move in a direction where AI is not going to be only about compliance, but it's going to be about confidence of your customer, of your shareholders, and the confidence of the larger public at large. So I'd say boards will have to go through this themselves and their teams to get to a point where there's a lot more understanding and education they have.
Thank you, Rohan. So just, moving on, I think you talked about not just the board members educating themselves, but, having a governance on understanding what are the risks and, how do you kind of, start modeling it. If I, move to you, Sahil, again, traditionally, the thought process is that if you have a model, you need to have a human who can test out the model and see, whether the model is good, bad, what are the risks. But in the world of AI, when the models are so many, right, and the outputs are so varied, right, is it possible to always have a human in the loop? Because, that also comes in the way of scalability. Or do you think AI can also govern AI? That there's a role of AI, so there's an AI that produces an output, there's another AI that checks, right? Or is that, getting into a world where we become too much dependent on AI? So how do you see this evolve?
If for me to have a good answer to that question, I should be a practitioner deploying these kind of systems, testing what is working and what is not working. I have not spent that much time deploying these systems at production scale. So my answer is pure conjecture. And therefore, it must be treated as such. It is, as they say, free advice is worth what you paid for it. So this is worth not much, my answer. The point being that I think it's very important in the early stages of any technology to understand what are the patterns of failure. And to understand it, the decision makers need to see where those failures will occur. Now, a human in the loop is also, it is not something that is beyond failure, right? Humans are deeply flawed creatures, they will make mistakes. AIs, again, have their own modalities of failure. Thinking of these systems as foolproof systems or design, kind of looking at it as something that is a panacea, I think is the biggest risk here. These are enablers, these are tools. And so whenever you think of looking and using a tool, understanding its modality of failure by actually failing, and there will be accidents, there will be costs, which will reveal themselves as people deploy them more and more. I am not a seer. I cannot tell you which model will be more effective. Although I think you will see layering of different types of AI as a natural extension. Because just like you cannot have one person who's an expert in everything, I think the same type of constraints apply to artificial intelligence as it does for biological intelligence. You can only be this good at that many things. And if you want to achieve a certain level of performance, you will have to be trained specifically on that particular field. And then, therefore, there will be another AI which is trained on checking, which will do the checking. So there will be layering. But ultimately, the responsibility has to be taken by a human. The buck has to stop with a meat bag somewhere, right? Wetware. It will stop somewhere with someone who took that decision. Until, of course, machine, we have Skynet, but that will happen maybe sometime, who knows when. Yeah.
Please go.
I think, Sahil, that was a really good. There was a big conversation around this, saying, is there enough? I think there are two questions that come up always: is what is human in the loop, and second is how does this whole AI story impact the employees in the organization? I think there's an inherent fear that people think that their jobs are going to go away. People are starting to think that I might not have a job because AI is coming through. I think what you said was absolutely right, is that the buck stops at the human. And the human has to be there. I think people need to start thinking that how do they elevate themselves to do something different compared to what they did before, whereas the machine could do that. Sorry.
No, when you were saying that the buck has to stop with the human, I think the buck has to stop with the human leader. Because if you say that a buck has to stop with the human, then, I heard this wonderful term in a discussion with a bunch of very smart lawyers, saying that humans in the age of AI will be used as a moral crumple zone. Right? Because you can't blame this machine beyond a point. You put some guy in the middle of that decision-making loop saying, that guy was supposed to check. He didn't check. So some person will take the fall. And unless you actually start driving accountability towards the leadership that is designing these systems, you will have people in the middle layer or the lower layer that will act as human crumple zones, saying they're just there to take the fall when something goes wrong. Otherwise, when things are going right, they're just there to nod along. So I think we need to be very aware and very careful that we don't turn our employees into moral crumple zones.
No, I agree with you. And it works both ways. It's going to come from top to down to top. Because my first answer was on the boards. But I think every person who's in the loop then needs to take the ownership. But I think, Ruchin, the other thing we see is that are organizations able to do enough to create more humans in the loop? And how do they go around doing that? I think that's a big question in terms of how people do that. I think we are experiencing this a lot. Organizations are seeing this a lot. And how do you start sort of training people? There are different reports that say there are very few people who are trained well enough to be humans in the loop and all of that. So I think education, a lot of things, gamifications we are doing now today, a lot that's happening around sort of sandboxing, working with third-party organizations. So I think there's a lot happening. But I think to your point, will it become AI over AI? Because there are not enough humans to do it. I think I don't know the answer to that at this point of time.
Yeah. Great. I think the way Sahil put it, there'll be different layers of AI, and like every human has a role to play. I think every AI model will have a role to play. I think that's probably the way to go. I'm conscious of time. It's the last 5 minutes. Are there any questions from the audience? I see a hand behind. So if you can just take a mic, maybe introduce yourself and ask a question.
When Mr. Sahil Kini said there could be problems, in the system also, so you have to blame the leader. But when you design a system is first a model in itself. Later on, you can build on with your AI models in the system itself. And regarding problems or system not working properly, you can also have the testing sessions when we test the entire system, part by part, each module, and you get them cascaded in the same system, I think it should work perfectly. I don't think AI system should go wrong at any time.
All right.
The current transformer models are built on Hopfield networks. Hopfield networks have something called the energy function. And so therefore, when you look for an answer, it's looking to find the low energy point there. And therefore, in the models that are there, there is a parameter called temperature. Those of you who are familiar with internals of AI will know that.
Not much.
So in temperature, if you keep the temperature parameter very low, then when you ask the same question to AI, it will give you the same answer. But the temperature parameter is set up to high. And when it is set up to high, if you ask the same question, it will give you different answers every time. So the question to your point is that if I have to go to AI and ask for dietary advice, please go ahead and do that.
But
But if you have to go and ask for surgical advice, you will be dead if you do that. If the temperature, because the current AI systems are not meant to provide surgical advice. Now, of course, there are many reasoning systems, neurosymbolic AI particularly, which offer and solve a different problem. So the best way to think of it is the whole world is fixated on one type of AI right now, which is the Gen AI. Gen AI is not even the most powerful AI. The most powerful AI is DeepMind AI that happened, and you heard from Manish earlier in the day, which has taken where researchers would spend a whole lifetime getting out the protein structure for one protein. 30 years it used to take. By the time that model came, only a handful of proteins had been for whom the structure was done. Now all proteins in the world, we have the structure. That type of AI is fundamentally different from Gen AI. The world is going to change more because of DeepMind than it is going to change because of Gen AI. So Gen AI will only make half the, we have this thing. I can tell you in 10 years, only half of you will be employed.
I believe that.
Which half why?
It is a fact.
Because please go and read a book called Bullshit Jobs. It's got a terrible name, but a good content. It says most of the jobs are bullshit jobs. Those 50% of the bullshit jobs will be removed. Because AI doesn't require you to have them at all. So all that AI will do is to create unemployment amongst half of you. But that's not what the change will come about. Change will come about what happens in health, what happens, how buildings are made. There are many other areas where all this will happen. And that's really the type of AI we should be thinking about as we go forward.
I think, sir, you have asked a question and we are running out short of time. If you can also take a mic, please. Somebody can just give a mic here. Oh, you have a mic, please. Okay, so.
Hello. Very interesting discussion. Thank you for that. Now, still, issue about accountability remains open. When you talk about layered above AI to check the earlier decisions and all that, I think it is a great time now we should decide about accountability. Another question is about AI risk capital stipulation. Question is addressed to Mr. Sahil, who is from Reserve Bank. Whether you have thought about, stipulating AI risk capital anytime. This,
I didn't catch AI risk.
like
If I get a
market
question-
risk, credit risk, capital that banks have to maintain.
Oh, risk capital.
Risk appetite. The AI risk appetite. That's all.
In the sense, you're talking about the appetite or how much capital they have to deploy in, I couldn't hear you.
It is some fund maintained in reserves to meet the future risk on your capital.
So some fund that will be maintained for addressing
Credit risk,
risks that are
market
there
risk.
with AI. We don't have an official view on this yet, so I won't comment on it. I think any institution would do well to think about investment, especially if they're sufficiently large. If they think they should be thinking about what kind of investments they want to make in AI. And if you're making investments in AI, then having a contingency fund to manage fallouts that would be there would be wise. But not for me to say. It is not, the Reserve Bank doesn't have an official position on it, so I will not comment any further.
Accountability.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Just, I think, last.
I'm in a snarky mood. See, how many of you are MBAs? Come on, don't be shy. Right? Now, look, for India to be an AI story, you need researchers, you need market players, and you need policymakers. It's called the triple helix. And India is going to make a big focus, and Rajan is here, 1 lakh crores has been set aside to focus on a new generation of research. Like in 2005, India said we need a new generation of banks. We will reform public sector banks, but we will also create private sector banks. And 30 years later, we have a healthier banking system because we have both type of banks. Similarly, we have public sector type of research, which is CSIR and academic research, that needs radical reform. But we also need a new type of research institutions to come up. And the government has been kind enough to set aside 1 lakh crores. As you know, it's called the RDI fund. Now, if you put this under the MBAs, boy, nothing is going to happen. Right? Because Rajan was in Google, and he will tell you, do you think who are more important? The MBAs are more important in Google, or researchers are more important in Google? Although he's not a researcher, he'll probably agree with me that it is the researchers that are more important. So you need to build a different type of a company. The second change that we have to do is, we have to run AI like a moonshot. Should the moonshot be run by a bureaucrat or a technocrat? Do you think we would have been successful in space if an IAS officer was running space? No. Do you think Aadhaar would have happened if instead of Nandan, a technocrat, there was a bureaucrat running it? No. So we have to make very big shifts. We have to put technocrats in charge of bureaucrats. We have to make researchers more important than the MBAs. It is those cultural shifts that are more important than money. Money will come. We are not short of money. We are short of a cultural mindset, a legacy that we have to unlearn. And with your help, we can do that as we go forward.
Great. I think with those, final comments, I will, bring this discussion to an end. Thank you so much. I think it was a very, entertaining and nice discussion. Thank you, audience, for being patient listeners.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your vital and timely discussion. Kindly remain on stage. I would like to request Ms. Apurva Rathore, Company Secretary and Chief Sustainability Officer at L&T Finance, to kindly come up and felicitate our wonderful speakers with our token of gratitude. You all know what to do, right? Do we need to do the LTF raise again? Come on, give it up. Thank you so much.